UFC Vegas 45 is almost here. We're going to take our last look at this slate. I'll give you my final picks, talk about things that we need to do to be successful on this card, and it's the final scraps of the year. I'm pretty excited. We have to recoup the Christmas spending or load up to start doing some Christmas spending. You can call me Kunith. Let's make some money this week. If you haven't already, go back and watch the first look video from earlier in this week. That's where we go over the card fighter by fighter, salary by salary. We talk about spots that we like and spots that we don't like, but that's where we dig really deep, almost a full card breakdown. For this final picks video, we're going to look at what we need to do to be successful this week, some value spots, and how we could get different on this slate. And as always, if you've been enjoying the content at all, please like the video, subscribe to the channel. Again, huge plans for 2022, trying to bring this to you in a completely different way. I'm excited and I want you guys to be along for the ride, so please subscribe. Now, what do we need to do to be successful this week? Well, we have 14 fights, and this is a fight night card. A lot of these fights are very, very close. Some of the more expensive fighters like Amanda Lemos, Raoni Barcelos, Ricky Simone, they look fantastic. But a lot of these other fights are really close, and because they're really close, there are a few things that we need to keep in mind. First is going to be how we look at salary. The easiest way to shoot yourself in the foot when it comes to MMA DFS is trying to use every bit of the salary that's available. That's what 90% of your competition is going to do this week. They're going to play the fewest underdogs as possible and use up as much of that salary as they can. This looks like a week where a lot of underdogs can win, so leaving 500 to 1,000 salary on the table is more than a viable option for this slate. And you can do that without avoiding those premium, higher-priced fighters like Amanda Lemos, who we were talking about before. Second thing we want to look at is finishing upside. And we're always looking for finishing upside, obviously, but again, a lot of these fights are going to be closely contested, so you can expect there to be more decisions than last week at UFC 269, where it felt like almost every fight was finishing. A lot of the fighters on that card put up really good Draftkings scores, but I don't expect that to be the case this week. I think a lot of these are going to go to decision, and we're not going to see just 100 like we saw last week. I think you're going to see a lot more fights that have the winner scoring about 70, 80, 90 points. So we have to do our best to look at fighters that have high finishing upside, and we covered a lot of that in our first look video. So again, if you haven't watched, go back and check it out. And third, as always, and this is killing me, always check your lineups before lock. Now, if you're watching this, you probably already know that, but it's happened every week since I've brought it up. I get into these contests and people are rostering fighters that aren't fighting. That's especially important this week because we have fighters that are changing weight classes. We have fighters that are notoriously bad on the scales. COVID seems to cancel one fight a week at this rate, so you want to pay attention and make sure you're playing 6 fighters on Saturday. I know it sounds silly, but I'm telling you every week. Every week it happens. Now I'm going to get into the value plays, fighters at 8,000 and below that I think are worth taking a look at. Right at 8,000 you have Matt Sales, and we always talk about how important it is to get this 8,000 to 8,200 range correct. Matt Sales should have a massive striking advantage in this spot, and he does look live for a knockout finish if the fight stays standing. But I am concerned about the long layoff. He hasn't fought in over 2 years, and the last time we saw him fight was against Bryce Mitchell, and he lost to a twister in the first round. Now, getting subbed by Bryce Mitchell, there's really no shame in that, but a twister? Come on, son. The grappling scares me, I'm not going to lie. Obviously, Jordan Levitt is looking to take the fight to the ground, but I just think that at this weight class, maybe with the 2 years off as well, maybe he's worked on his grappling. I just can't see myself betting Jordan Levitt in this spot based on what we've seen from him so far. So I think Matt Sales is an excellent value this week at 8,000. I don't think a ton of the field is going to be on him. He's one of these earlier fights on the card, so you can get off to a really good start. Matt Sales for me at 8,000 looks like a solid value. 7,900, you have Derek Lewis. We talked about why I don't like Derek Lewis in the first look, but we do need to talk about him for value for obvious reasons. It's the heavyweight division, anything can happen, and I think that kind of thinking applies to Derek Lewis more than anybody else. He could pull a rabbit out of his hat again and get the KO finish over Chris Daukaus. I wouldn't really be surprised, but I don't like banking on the idea of he's going to land that one punch that ends the night against somebody like Chris Daukaus. On top of that, I do think that Derek Lewis is going to be the higher owned of the two fighters in the main event, so I'm not that high on Derek Lewis, but I think it would be wrong to not talk about him as a value play because he can stop the fight at any second. At 7,600, you have Josh Parisian. Earlier in the week, I wasn't too high on Josh Parisian, but the more that I look at this fight, the more I like him. He's got solid output for the division, and that may give Don'Tale Mayes a little bit of trouble. Parisian might also have success taking this fight to the ground. Don'Tale Mayes has been taken down 6 times in his 3 UFC fights. Parisian doesn't look to grapple normally, but that is a path to victory for him. That's probably something that he and his coaches see. And again, just like the Derek Lewis fight, this is a heavyweight fight. Anything could happen. Josh Parisian could knock him out with one punch. Don'Tale Mayes can knock him out with one punch. But I'd rather be on the cheaper side of that possible outcome for the guy that's probably going to have better output. So I'm actually going to change my mind from what's on the first look. I'm going to take Josh Parisian this week at 7,600. Really good value down at this price range. Melissa Gatto looks like a strong play at 7,500. I will admit this is more a spot where I'm just trying to fade Sijara Eubanks more than I want to play Melissa Gatto. But I do think that if Gatto can survive that first round, isn't completely out-grappled, that she's probably going to win this fight. My only concern would be the ceiling, because if she does drop round 1, yes, I think she'll still win the fight if it gets extended that far, but she might not finish Sijara Eubanks and thus not score that many points. So she's not a must play. You have heavyweights on this card. I don't expect a lot of those fights to go to the distance, so you'll probably want to target those. You have somebody like Amanda Lemos who's going to take Angela Hill's head off, so you don't have to get to Melissa Gatto down at this range, but at 7,500, I do think that she's probably going to win this one. At 7,400, Darren Elkins is by far one of my favorite plays on the slate this week. I think he's being overlooked, which is not uncommon. Darren Elkins is normally overlooked, but just think for a second about the kind of fight that he wants this to be. He's looking to make his opponents work, because he knows what we know. Who's going to get tired first? Obviously not Darren Elkins, so he's probably going to put a crazy pace on Cub Swanson early, and just know that Cub can't keep that pace and probably break him later in the second, maybe third round. And Cub Swanson is extremely sharp. I could see him rocking Elkins with something early, but I don't think that that's going to put him away, and I don't think that's going to keep him off him for all that long. And being that he's one of these guys that are so hard to put away, I could see Elkins getting the fight exactly where he wants it. Up against the fence, forcing Cub to defend takedowns, working in his dirty boxing in the clinch. Give me the damage this week. At 7,300, Andre Ewell is bringing his 6-inch reach advantage to Charles Jourdain, who doesn't defend or take strikes all that well. If Andre Ewell takes round 1, I think that he has this fight in the bag. I don't see Charles Jourdain being able to finish Ewell in this spot, and if he's fighting from behind like I think he's going to be, I think Andre Ewell could knock him out. I'm normally not high on Andre Ewell, but at this weight, I'm betting that he's going to be the best version of himself that we've seen so far. And at 6,900, you have Harry Hunsucker, who's either going to be a great play or the absolute worst play. Many people are going to overlook him because of the price tag, but honestly, I just think it's mispriced. I don't actually think that line makers understand Justin Tafa. If you look back at some of his fights, you'll notice that he's the favorite in fights that he loses, and he's the underdog in fights that he wins. We could see more of that this week, as he's the favorite against Harry Hunsucker, who has not only the experience advantage, but the grappling advantage as well. His 4 career losses all have been first-round knockouts, which is concerning, but I think that one takedown for him wins him this fight. And I also think that he could submit Justin Tafa. Like we talked about on the first look, you're paying $9,400 for Justin Tafa to land one big punch, basically, and I don't like that. I don't like that idea at all. And I'm going to finish up with just going over how we could be different this week. We talked earlier about leaving salary on the table. I think that's extremely important this week. Amanda Lemos, despite being the biggest favorite on the card, I expect her to be under-owned for what she's going to do. I recommend staying away from the co-main event. I expect Wonderboy to win. I don't expect him to score all that many points either, and I expect Wonderboy to be over-owned because he's going to be in the co-main event. If you do target that fight, you're better off playing Belal Muhammad, and I don't say that because I think that Belal Muhammad's going to win, but think about the game for a second. Most of the time, when you look at the people who win these contests, they have fighters that finish their fights or were in a dominant position for most of it, score around 600 plus points. Wonderboy could quite possibly score 68 points. He could win, but he could score 68 points. So if that happens, you lost anyway. So if you are going to target that fight, you you might as well play Bilal Muhammad, because at 7,100, it doesn't matter how many points he scores. If he wins, you're in a great spot because of the other things you were able to do with your lineup. So don't play Wonder Boy is basically what I'm saying. And don't forget that Ricky Simone is the man. If you have any questions about your lineup, throw them down in the comments. I'd love to answer them for you. I'm very responsive with the comments as well, so I definitely want to hear what you guys are playing this week, or know if you guys have any questions about your lineups. But that's been the Final Picks video. Thank you so much for watching. As always, make sure you like the video, subscribe to the channel. That way I can bring more of this to you.